Hey y'all, how's my 2020 survivors? I'm back with another video. And this time it's about domestic abuse, violence on men. Now I know I was supposed to do the video on catfishing. And I am. As a matter of fact, I got it. And I also have this one. But both of them are on my laptop. And I'm having a problem uploading them. So I'm just going to do them over again. And since this one on domestic violence was first, I'll do this one, and then hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday I'll do the one on catfishing. And like I said, I already have both of them. But you know me, I'm just having all these bloopers. So domestic violence against men isn't always easy to identify, because just like with the women, and even more so, the men will not report it when they're in an abusive situation. But it can be a serious threat, so know how to recognize if you're being abused and how to get help. So by the Mayo Clinic staff, women aren't the only victims of domestic violence. Understand the signs of domestic violence against men and know how to get help. So, to recognize the domestic violence against men, domestic violence, also known as intimate partner violence, occurs between people who are or have been in a close relationship. Now, domestic violence can take many forms, including emotional, sexual, and physical abuse, stalking, and threats of abuse, and it can happen in heterosexual or same-sex relationships. Abusive relationships always involve an imbalance of power and control. That's what it's all about, is power and control. They love to take control. They love to be abusive. And they don't know how to take control of anything else. So they'll use you through threats and physical and mental abuse. So abusive relationships always involve an imbalance of power and control. An abuser uses intimidating, hurtful words and behaviors to control his or her partner. An abuser uses intimidating, hurtful words and behaviors to control his or her partner. And the reason why I repeat sometimes the things that I'm saying, because I wanted to think through. Because even whoever's out here looking at these videos, if you're not in an abusive situation, if you know someone else is or you think they are, tell them to watch this video. Maybe you can sit down with them and watch the video. And even at that point, don't sit around and watch the videos on domestic violence when your partner's around, because you may start getting ideas, that you know what's going on, or you're trying to figure out what's going on, you're trying to get help. So, go to a friend's house and watch the videos when he's not home, and not just my videos, but there's many other videos out there on domestic violence. There's books. You can call the hotline numbers if you're unsure whether you're in an abusive situation. So, it might not be easy to recognize domestic violence against men. Early in the relationship, your partner might seem attentive, generous, and protective in ways that later turn out to be controlling and frightening. Initially, The abuse might appear as isolated incidents. Your partner might apologize and promise not to abuse you again. And see, they can switch off and on like a light switch. 1 minute they're loving and kind, the next minute they're abusive. 1 minute they're loving and kind, the next minute they're abusive. So, this is the honeymoon stage, when the partner apologizes and promises not to abuse you again. Now, see, that's not one thing. That's not one thing that they can do. They cannot turn it off, and today they're going to abuse you, but tomorrow they're going to say, I'm never going to do it again. Now, there have been, I'll just say a few. I don't know the statistics. I haven't looked that up. But there may be a few here and there that may abuse you once or twice and then they realize what they're doing, and you know that they'll never do it again. But that is very, very far and few. And that's what you call the honeymoon stage. You know, they abuse you, then they make up with you, whisper sweet nothings in your ear, bring you roses, take you out to dinner or cook dinner for you, tell you they're never going to do it again. But see, in order for them never to do it again, they have to realize that they have a problem. And then they have to get help. They must seek help because they are going to repeat the same thing. So, you might be experiencing domestic violence if your partner calls you names, insults you, or puts you down, prevents you from going to work or school. And the reasons they prevent you from going to school, they don't want you to get ahead of them. They don't want you to get an education because they're afraid that then you're going to move on and you're not going to need them anymore. They don't want you to go to work for many reasons because maybe they're not working. And you're the only one out there working and you have control of the money. They have nothing. Maybe you even make more than they do. Or they may just want to keep you in the home to keep you under their watchful eyes and under their control. So people on the outside don't have to see what's going on. You might be experiencing domestic violence if your partner stops you from seeing family members or friends. And that happens a lot. They don't want you to see your family. They don't want you to see your friends because they don't want them to know what's going on. And they don't want anyone to butt in. They don't want anyone to help. If you approach them with what they think is going on, then they're going to say that you're crazy, you're lying. So they threaten to tell friends, family, colleagues, or community members your sexual orientation or gender, because remember we're talking about now both men and women. They try to control how you spend your money, where you go, and what you wear. They act jealous or possessive or constantly accuses you of being unfaithful. And see, a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, unless they have proof, they are the ones that are cheating. But they want to make you be the one to feel guilty, like you're the one. So they are the ones a lot of times being unfaithful. But if they can convince you that you're the one, It makes them feel better. It makes them feel in control. And then they'll use that as an excuse once they're found out that that's the reason they are cheating and being unfaithful. So if the both of you are going to be unfaithful, what's the point of being together? If you can't work it out and you're going to be with other people, well, fight and argue and abuse each other. Just split up, you know. Just call it quits for a while. Take a break. Okay. They act jealous, possessive, or constantly accuse you of being unfaithful. They get angry when drinking alcohol or using drugs. And usually when they're drinking and or taking drugs, it really, really escalates the situation. And I know when I was in my abusive situation, a lot of times when I woke up the next morning, I didn't even know how it began. I mean, it would be so stupid and senseless. And I'd actually be trying to think about, well, how did it even start? You know, I mean, what escalated it so much, you know? Was it really worth all this? So, they try to control whether you can see a health care provider. And that's because they don't want the health care providers to see the marks and bruises. They don't want you to tell them what's going on. 9 times out of 10, they're the ones that take you to the hospital. They're probably in the waiting room waiting for you. So even if you wanted to tell what's wrong with you, you're afraid because you know that he or she, whoever the abuser is waiting for you. And you're afraid of what might happen when you go home, or you don't want to break up the family because of the kids. So it just be so many things that went through your mind, or like I said, you're afraid of what might happen if he finds out that you told the authorities and you told the healthcare providers what happened. So then you make up a lie, an excuse of how you obtained the injuries. And I keep saying her, but it goes for both men and women. And in this case, I'm talking about the both, whoever the abuser is. So, they threaten you with violence or a weapon. And you see, that's just happening even more so as we speak. The abuse is getting more and more violent because now they are abusing the children. They're abusing the children. They're killing you. They're killing the kids, the grandparents. I mean, it's really, really escalating. And like I always say, it's escalating even more now because of this COVID, whatever, 19. And then they're in the house even more, drinking and drugging, and then they're frustrated because they lost their jobs, maybe losing their homes, and all that builds up, and they use that as an excuse to abuse even more. Now, not only you are being abused, the children are being abused. If any of the grandparents live in the home, there's a possibility they're being abused. If you have pets in the house, the dog, they're being abused. Everybody is going through this abuse. But nobody sees the signs. Nobody is trying to get out. You know, and I know it takes time. You know, I've been there. You know, a lot of times you don't get out because you don't have anywhere to go. And you're so confused, and your mind is just racing. Sometimes you think it's your fault. Or you're thinking about your kids, or maybe he works and you don't. So I know it takes time, but, you know, the first sign that you see, I mean, open your eyes, people. That's all in the news, even more and more. I know every time I wake up, turn on the TV, there's an incident of domestic violence. And it's not just man on the woman and a woman on a woman and man on the man violence. Everybody in the house is getting abused now. In one way or the other. Sexually abused, child molestation. Everything is going on in this house. Dog is being abused. Control, control, control. All these people under one person's control. So we got to wake up. You got to wake up and see what's happening around you. And if you're not thinking about yourself, think about your children. So he threatens you with violence or a weapon, and he hits, kicks, shoves, slaps, chokes, or otherwise hurt you, your children, or your pets. He hits, he kicks, he shoves, slaps, chokes, or otherwise hurt you, your children, or your pets. You know? Sometimes they kick the pet. They kick the pet out the way. Abuse the children for no reason. Smack them around. Maybe threaten them with not having dinner because of something they did. Or just abusing them to be abusing them. You know, and there's no way, shape, or form you can sit around and see someone abusing your kids like that. So if you're not thinking about yourself, think about your children. And the children are not stupid. They know. They know what's going on. And it affects them. It affects them tremendously sometimes. So they force you to have sex or engage in sexual acts against your will. And again, just like no one has the right to put their hands on you, no one has the right to make you have sex if you say no. I don't care if it's your husband or your wife or whoever. No one has the right to force you to have sex. It is your body. There's no such thing, well, this is my husband or this is my wife. You know, that's old school stuff, you know. It's your body. You can say no. So they blame you for his or her violent behavior or tells you that you deserve it. Now that's another good one. That's another red flag. They tell you that you deserve it, that you deserve the abuse. Why? What did I do so bad that I need to be abused, especially physically? It's just so much. They'll just tell you, if you only do what I say, I wouldn't have to abuse you. If you would only clean up the house when I come home, have the house clean, I wouldn't have to abuse you. If you would just shut your mouth when I'm talking, you push my buttons, I have to abuse you. It's just sickening, y'all. It's really sickening. Now, it will embed this in your brain so much that you will sometimes actually believe that it's your fault. They'll tell you things like, well, if you would fix yourself up by the time I come home, I wouldn't have to cheat. If you would cook better or whatever. I mean, if things are so bad and so wrong in this relationship, if we can't mend it, then we just part. We don't have to go through all this abuse. because it's wasting my time, and he's wasting, or she is wasting their time. When hopefully we both could be with someone better, than we don't have to go through all this. So they blame you for his or her violent behavior, or tells you that you deserve it. And why do I deserve it? Why do I deserve to be slapped around, punched around, and kicked around, and sometimes even stomped around? Why do I deserve all this? No. I don't know. They threaten to tell your friends, your family, colleagues, or community members your sexually or orientation or gender identity. See, a lot of times you're not ready to come out the closet yet. So your abuser will threaten, if you try to leave them, they'll let everybody know that you're gay. So since you're not ready to let this be known, and even though you're in this abusive situation, you'll stay in it a little longer because you don't, want your identity to come out. So, but when it gets down to it, I think I'd rather let the world know before I stay in this situation and get my brains beat out. I mean, nobody knows it better than me. And yes, it did take me time now. It did take me time to get out that situation. And that's why I try my best to help others that are in the same situation. Because when you're going through it, a lot of times, you feel alone. You feel like you're the only one that's going through it. And you feel as though there's no help out there for you. And again, like I said in another video, when I finally got out of my abusive situation, I didn't go to any domestic violence organization because I didn't even know anything about a domestic violence organization at that time until I went to the criminal court. I went along with someone else, and I happened to see the supervisor. She was a supervisor at that time, and I started talking to her, and I found out about the volunteers and all. That was something I had wanted to do because I had been in that situation, so I became a volunteer. Later on, I became employed, but that, like I said, that was in another video. I don't want to keep repeating myself, saying the stuff over and over in each video. I want you to go back and you can find it, be constructive, and search for the information. Seek and you shall find. But I just want to help each and every one that may be in or think they're involved in a domestic violence situation. And that covers, personal relationships. It covers any family member, mother, father, sister, brother, the children, the grandparents. It involves everyone that's involved in domestic violence situation. And it's not just hurting you, it's hurting everyone else involved, such as your family, because a lot of times your family can see what's going on. They try to tell you, they try to help you, but for some reason you can't see it. So it's bothering that family member or that close friend because they can see what's going on, they see the signs, but you can't see it. So, we just got to do better. You got to do better. You got to do better before it really gets out of hand. And it may even be one of the children that gets seriously hurt. I remember years ago was an incident where this man had killed his own daughter. She was a young child. Oh, God, she was young. I believe she probably was under 10 years old, probably under 10. And he threw her in the river because he said that way he wanted to hurt the mom so she would suffer for the rest of her life. So see, that's how bad the situations can get. Sometimes they abuse the kids to get to you because they know it's going to hurt you. Or sometimes you're in that abusive situation and fighting and all, and one of the kids jump in to try to help, and they get hurt. Or they get thrown their head hit upside the wall or on the floor or whatever. And you don't want that to happen. So, I don't know. So if you're gay, bisexual, or transgender, you might also be experiencing domestic violence if you're in a relationship with someone who tells you that authorities won't help a gay, bisexual, or transgender person. Tells you that leaving the relationship means that you're admitting that gay, bisexual, or transgender relationships are deviant. Now, let me read that again. Tells you that leaving the relationship means that you're admitting that gay, bisexual, or transgender relationships are deviant. No, what it's telling you is that you're tired of the abuse. It's time to get away. That's what it's telling you, you know. And I don't care what type of relationship you're in, it's still the same. Just like it's woman on man abuse, man on woman abuse. There's also women that abuse the men. Then there's man on man domestic violence and woman on woman domestic violence. So, you know, it has to end somewhere. They tell you that, they justify the abuse by telling you that you're not really gay. And they say that men are naturally violent. And you know, I guess that's what men kind of think too, you know, because that's what they call themselves doing to try to control their women and vice versa. But that's what they do. They beat you because they think they control you in that way. You know? Why? Why? Because that's the quick way out to just beat you and abuse you? You know? And then a lot of times it's because they seen that coming up as a child. Their mother's being abused. So they looked up to the dad as the head of the house and, and then a lot of times they're trying to defend their mom. Sometimes the boys will grow up and they'll be abusers because that's all they've seen in the household, whereas some grow up and never will put their hand on a woman because of that's what they've seen their mother being abused. In the same way with little girls grow up and sometimes they go through that abuse because they think it's okay because they've seen their mom being abused and they figure that's what it's all about. The man is supposed to put his hands on you until one day you wake up and see that this is not for you, you know? Why? I mean, we are some, when you think about it, we're some strong women to even put up with the abuse for as long as some of us has. Not months, days, but years. And some women, some senior citizens and the men are going through the same thing as we speak. And it's even harder for them because a lot of them have health problems. A lot of them have no one in their life now but their partner. The children, if they have any, are all grown and out of the house. So they're just isolated and they're in that house with the abuser. So that's another good reason why, you check on your elderly parents and your grandparents. Check on them. There's so many things that's going on. So many things that's going on wrong in life now. Even if you can't always make it to visit, call them. FaceTime them, anything. Just check on them, make sure they're okay. It's something being isolated in a house where every day you wake up, there's abuse. Every day. And the thing is, some couples stay together forever or for a number of years at least, and they're fussing and arguing every single day. Not a day goes by that they're not arguing, and sometimes even fighting. But yet and still, they refuse to leave each other. They refuse to separate. So, don't take the blame. You may not be sure whether you're the victim or the abuser. And it gets to that point, trust me. You may not know if you're the victim or the abuser. It's common for survivors of domestic violence to act out verbally or physically against the abuser, yelling, pushing, or hitting him or her during conflicts. The abuser may use such incidents to manipulate you, describing them as proof that you are the abusive partner. Yeah, they turn it around once you be trying to defend yourself. Then they say that you are the abuser. And then that's when it comes into play that many times the survivors turn into the abuser because you're not trying to get out of the situation. You're being abused, so in turn, you become an abuser as well. And I don't know, what the laws is on that now because I haven't been with domestic violence in quite some time, the organization, and I'll probably get around to looking it up, but I know what I'm trying to say. There was a time when I lost my train of thought, describing them as proof that you are the abusive partner, yes. So there was a time when you called the police because you were in an abusive situation, a violent situation, the police would come out and they would see marks and bruises on both of you, where he abused you and then you abused him as well, but that's why. And I know in some states, I don't know which ones now, but in some states, they do have someone from the domestic violence organizations to ride along with the police officers on domestic violence cases, as well as in some emergency wards. Because when they come into emergency wards, it's hard to tell if that person was abused domestically or if it was someone assaulted by someone other than their partner or another family member, because a lot of times they won't tell who abused them if it's a family member or an intimate partner. So, it's, and yes, you can become the abuser as well. It comes to a point where you both are just abusing each other, more so than rather trying to get help. I mean, in a lot of cases, women will attend the support groups. They may not be being physically abused, but they're going through the mental abuse. And then some women or some people will swear up and down because they're not being physically abused that there's no abuse taking place because they don't recognize right away the mental abuse. So, but yeah, you may have developed unhealthy behaviors because many survivors do, but that doesn't mean that you are at fault for the abuse. If you're fighting back because at that time you're afraid, you feel as though you don't have any other choice because you just can't stand there and this other person be beating on you, so you try to fight back in order just to get away. Maybe you have a chance to run, or you're just trying to defend yourself. And you know this isn't the life you want. You know you don't want to be in this abusive situation. You fight back. And then if the police comes, then automatically you're both charged because they look at it as you both abusing others. And I guess until it's proven, that the abuser started it and you were only trying to defend yourself at the time. But rather than go through all those changes, seek a protection order. Make a plan. And if for some reason your abuser was to be locked up at a particular incident when the police is called, sometimes then you have a chance to get away before he's released. Because 9 times out of 10, he'll probably be released like the next morning, or if it's the weekend, probably won't be released till that Monday. And if he's locked up over the weekend, that's even more better because you have a chance to get your things together and get out of there. If, again, that you have somewhere to go. So that's another thing. You want to go have somewhere to go, especially if you have your children. That's why it's good to have a plan. So it's just so much. So they tell you so much that it just, makes your head spin. And it just keep you in that cycle of abuse because you don't know what to do. You have low self-esteem. You're afraid for yourself and your children. Sometimes they say if you leave, you're going to hurt your parents. So, I don't know. So, let's see. You may have developed unhealthy behavior. So many survivors do, and that doesn't mean that you are at fault for the abuse. If you're having trouble identifying what's happening, take a step back and look at large patterns in your relationship. Then review the signs of domestic violence. In an abusive relationship, the person who routinely uses these behaviors is the abuser. And that's why, if you know the signs of abuse, you can distinguish between who's the abuser. The person that's actually abusing you, or is it you because you defend yourself? They play with your mind. And then you got to think about the fact, I know my thing finally was that if I wanted to fight all the time, I would have became a boxer. And I know that I didn't want to go through life fighting with someone all the time. I never, ever had a fight with a woman or a girl. It was always a man. Why? It was always a man. All I ever wanted was a family and the kids and a white picket fence and, all that good stuff. But, I got my life. I do have the family. I have my kids, my grown kids. But I also got my life, and that's a good thing. So not only am I almost surviving 2020, we got a little ways to go. I'm almost surviving 2020, but I also survived domestic violence. So that's 2 strikes. We got to see what number 3 is. That's not 2 strikes, no. That's 2 thumbs up, y'all. That's 2 thumbs up. Yay. I'm a survivor. I take it after my mama, 'cause I'm a survivor. Yeah, y'all. My mama was in World War II, y'all. My mama was an army nurse. Everybody say I look like her. And I see it more and more when I do these videos, yeah. I look like my mama, and I take after my mama. So, if you're having trouble identifying what's happening, take a step back, look at the larger patterns in your relationship, then review the signs of domestic violence. In an abusive relationship, the person who routinely uses these behaviors is the abuser. The person on the receiving end is the one that's being abused. So don't ever think that it's your fault that you're being abused. No matter what they tell you, it's not your fault. No matter what you didn't do or did, there's no reason for you to be abused, physically or mentally. So even if you're still not sure, seek help. Intimate partner violence causes physical and emotional damage, no matter who is at fault. And trust me, it does cause damage, and it's causing more and more damage as we speak. More and more lives are being taken because of domestic violence. So children and abuse. So domestic violence affects children, even if no one is physically attacking them. If you have children, remember that being exposed to domestic violence makes them more likely to have developmental problems, psychiatric disorders, problems at school, aggressive behavior, and low self-esteem. You might worry that seeking help could further endanger you and your children, or that it might break up your family. Fathers might fear that abusive partners will try to take their children away from them, but however, getting help is the best way to protect your children and yourself. So, you got to break the cycle of violence. If you're in an abusive situation, you might recognize this pattern. Your abuser threatens violence. If you're in an abusive situation, you might recognize this pattern. Your abuser threatens violence. Your abuser threatens you, pushes you, slaps you, punches you, kicks you. Your abuser apologizes, promises to change, and offer gifts. But the cycle repeats itself. So typically the violence becomes more frequent and severe over time. Domestic violence can leave you depressed and anxious. Depressed and anxious. And can increase your risk of having a drug or an alcohol problem. Because you're so depressed, because you're so anxious, you can't even concentrate. If you work, you can't concentrate on your job. If you go to school, you can't concentrate on the schoolwork. If you're home and it's almost time for him to come home, you're anxious because you don't know what's going to happen or what mood he's going to be in. So then you're walking around on pins and needles. You're trying to keep the kids quiet if you have kids. You're trying to make sure everything is just right in hopes that he doesn't come in and get started. But to no avail, no matter what you say or do, if he feels like bringing it on, that's what he's going to do. So domestic violence can leave you depressed and anxious and can increase your risk of having a drug or alcohol problem. And remember again, the drugs and the alcohol is not going to solve the problem. It's only going to add on to it. You may think it's making you feel better at the moment, but it's just adding on to the problem. The problem is going to still be there, and it's going to get worse. And 9 times a day, if you're drinking and or drugging, he may be doing one or both of the same things too. And then it's really going to escalate. It's really going to get out of hand. And now, from everything that I can see pertaining to domestic violence, it's getting real bad. It's getting real demonic. Very demonic. Very demonic. So that's why I do this. That's why I make these videos. I know they're not perfect or none of that, but I just want you to hear what I have to say about domestic violence, and as well as a lot of these other topics. Because as far as domestic violence, as far as anything, who can tell you better than someone that has been there, than someone who has experienced these things? So since I'm a survivor, I just want you and you and you and you, and whoever's out there that's going through any of these things, I want you to be a survivor too. So that's why I do these videos. Because even as I speak now, I know that there are so many out there that's going through the same thing right now. Male and or female are going through the same thing. Because every day, more and more, that I wake up, or that I look on my Facebook, I look at the news, whatever, all I hear about is domestic violence. Domestic violence. They're taking out the partners, they're taking out the children. So I just hope again that someone just hears what I'm saying, and that it can help someone out there, and then that someone can help someone else. And maybe we can form a chain of helping so that people can see the signs of abuse. They can become aware of what's going on, and they can save themselves and other family members or friends. So, because men are traditionally thought to be physically stronger than women, you might be less likely to report domestic violence. In your heterosexual relationships, due to embarrassment, you might also worry that people will minimize the importance of the abuse because you're a man. Similarly, a man being abused by another man might be reluctant to talk about the problem because of how it reflects on his masculinity or because it exposes his sexual orientation. And I know out of the 8.5 to 10 years, whatever, that I worked for domestic abuse, because I was in one office for a couple of years, and then I was moved on when I became the Hotline volunteer coordinator. And I only remember having a male client one time. But there are so many men out there that are being abused. And I remember as a child coming up, and I would see, from time to time, I would see women hitting on their man or beating on their man, and, you know, people thought it was funny because it was the woman, you know, beating the man, and they thought it was funny. But you live and you learn. And like I said, no one has the right to put their hands on another person. And then sometimes people, they know your weakness. They know your weakness, and they know, or they believe, that you're not going to hit them back. And that's especially, I believe, with women in some cases that abuse their man because they know that that man is not going to hit them back. Because, again, it's all about control. And if they know they can control that man, there it is. Because there are men out there that do not beat on women. And even if they have a woman that beat on them, they will never hit them back. Even if they have to eventually leave them, and they won't report it because they don't want to be looked down as a man. So, if you seek help, you might find that there are fewer resources for male victims of domestic violence. Healthcare providers in other contexts might not think to ask if your injuries were caused by domestic violence. They don't think about the fact that it was a woman that abused you if you're a man. They don't think about that. They just think about you got out there in a fight with another man or whatever. And that's why it's good to have someone from the domestic violence organization housed in the emergency wards, as well as to ride along with police officers on domestic violence cases. And they say that domestic violence is one of the most dangerous cases that police officers come upon, because in a lot of cases, when the police are called out for a domestic violence case between a man and a woman, they they sometimes almost get abused by the abuser as well as their partner. They would turn on the police officer.